It's a state of emergency. 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 It's a state of emergency.
Occupy.
We say decolonize.
You say occupy.
Decolonize.
You say occupy.
We say decolonize.
You say occupy.
We say decolonize.
As capitalism is loosening its grip around the world, it is slowly dying. And state governments, local governments, and even the federal government has turned to its one last resort, fascism, to help this system sustain itself. And that fascism takes on the form of local and state police forces on the ground. Bring the pain, bring the hurt to each and every one of us.
De que supuestamente Oakland es una ciudad santuario, pero está participando con el ICE. ¿Verdad? Eso es como una hipocresía, que resulta que la agarraron con una infracción muy pequeña, resultó que los trajeron aquí y de aquí de repente llegó un agente del ICE y los empezó a entrevistar y resulta que al último terminaron en un centro de detención.
Que el Estado se metió en eso y en realidad las ciudades no tienen manera de salirse. Ellos comparten la información.
Sí, es cierto, y por eso también estamos enfocando de una manera haciendo ordenanzas a diferentes métodos de organización. Sí, es cierto, pero entonces que dejen su hipocresía de decir que Oakland es una ciudad santuario. Que si van a hacer lo que van a hacer, que digan y salgan a la luz y se dejen de hipocresías de que Oakland es una ciudad santuario.
We're going to Oakland Housing Authority, which is the HUD main office in Oakland, California. I'm Vivian. I'm a welfare queen, poverty scholar on the scene with Poor magazine. We are marching today on November 10th in solidarity against all the oppressions of powers that keep our peoples down. Me having lived in Oakland Housing Authority property for 5.5 years in public housing, it was a nightmare. It was a living hell, and the bureaucracy and the red tape that they create that doesn't allow families and peoples to get proper shelter is only getting worse at this time and age with a 30% cut to the HUD. So my experience was back in 2002 to 2006 when I was homeless in downtown Oakland and we got housing, that they kept cutting back and holding out on repairing the housing. So we lived in really substandard housing with old aluminum windows, drafty, black mold in the walls, which actually created a health condition for me in the future. Yeah. So for me, seeing that they're going to even create more cuts on HUD and housing is an absolute crime to humanity. Yeah. So at this time, in hard times in the United States, this should be a time when they should be implementing more funding to housing programs for families.
No love. We get no love.
So, everybody start picking up. Everybody pick it up.
I met this man named Myron. He was living on the streets. He was living in his truck, taking care of his 2 disabled sons. Why? Because he had tried to get housing from HUD. This man was a social worker, don't get me wrong. He was educated, but he got sick. He had a heart problem. He got sick. And because of that, he lost his job. And because of the medical bills, he lost his home. He lost everything he had. And so when he went to the housing authority, trying to get to Section 8 housing, he presented them with his ID, with all his paperwork, saying that, that he had, that these were actually his sons, and showing that they were disabled, all that stuff, all the paperwork that you gotta have to try to get housing, to try to get Section 8 housing. And the people from HUD looked at him and turned him down, and they said to his face that we do not deal with Indian people, that we do not house Indian people. I said, oh, you guys got your own ways of dealing with things. You guys got casinos, you guys got all that. You don't need our help. And they sent him back on the street to take care of his 2 disabled sons out of his truck. And finally, after 2 years of pushing HUD After 2 years of getting the media's attention, getting the community to rally around him, just to try to get housing, just to try to get Section 8 housing that was legally his, the people at HUD finally relented, and they said, okay, all right, we give up. We'll give you some housing. But you got to sign this thing saying that we never did anything wrong. And he was so desperate that he took it. What else could he do? He was living on the street. He had a terminal illness, taking care of 2 disabled boys. So this is what it comes to. This is what happens with HUD. This is the social safety net that we have for people in this.
Well, the system's falling down. Super baby mama. Hey. Take the kids and lock her up. What? Lock her up. What? Lock her up. What? Take the kids and lock her up. What? Super baby mamas. Welfare queen. Super baby mamas.
Who's deserving versus undeserving of aid?
This society makes it illegal to be poor. This society does not recognize, support, or legitimize the work involved in raising children. This society is quick to accuse poor mothers of the crime of being poor, and that's daddies too, rather than recognize the heroism of our survivors.
This poem is in honor of homeless mothers and poor mothers, low-wage mothers and no-wage mothers, welfare mothers and three-job working mothers, migrante mothers and incarcerated mothers. In other words, this poem is in honor of INS with, CPS with, and most of all, system mess with mothers. That's the welfare queen.
Since last warning, I showed you I'm transforming. Like the grapes that pass through hourglasses shaped by sandstorm wind. Put them in the trance with the recorder, seen a hand swarming. In the crowd I ran towards them, in my wingspan soaring. Like I'm flash caught with an aerial view of the mitten next to Ontario, a barrier crew.
Poor Peoples Decolonization. We're here because poor people have been colonized. These lands have been occupied since the Ohlone people were removed from the original colonizers. We're here in downtown San Francisco, where a lot of the big banks are based. How does that affect poor people? Corporate welfare. Corporate welfare camps are never charged. They are never criminalized. But poor mamas are constantly criminalized.
That it's me, while Kwame defending his text and descending in debt. I got the opposition.
Every time I even get the stench of this building, like today, I just want to tear it down. Someday we will tear it down. Soon we will occupy it inside. But today I am proud to be with you all, especially those of you who took the journey all day today from Oakland to San Francisco, occupying various institutions. And on behalf of the day laborers and domestic workers that I have the honor and the privilege of working with every day, that of course there's a connection between what happens in this building and what happens in the hallways of the banks and the corporations that we were trying to destroy. The people who are benefiting, the 1%, are able to benefit in part because they are able to scapegoat people like undocumented workers. Not only have we continued to allow them to exploit human beings and attempt to justify that exploitation through dehumanization and criminalization. How convenient, those criminals. They are subhuman because in this country, criminals are subhuman. Therefore, they don't deserve access to basic things like health care and food and affordable housing and a quality public education. We know that there's a connection between the corporations and the human rights violations against immigrant workers because we know who is benefiting the most by the deportations. And shall I remind us that it is almost 500,000 each year. That means more than 1,000 people a day are being terrorized, separated from their friends and families, and deported. Treated like criminals because, as Tiny said, they are trying to survive, feed their families. Yeah, the big banks like Wells Fargo. Where are you, Wells Fargo? Investing billions in the largest detention centers in this country and profiting from people's suffering. We have members at the San Francisco Day Labor Program who, as we speak, are in detention. I just came from the Madrid hotel paying one of our members rent so he wouldn't be evicted while he goes through the deportation process. Shame on this country. Shame on this government.
So this is Article 10 of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Indigenous peoples shall not be forcibly removed from their lands or territories. No relocation shall take place without the free and informed consent of the indigenous peoples concerned and after agreement on just and fair compensation and, where possible, with the option of return. So did everybody hear that? Not forcibly
allegiance to the people of the United States of America, nor dim or repel, united we stand, one nation, no false gods or greedy individuals, with the freedom to be and justice for all.
Up in the place, the musically we setting the standards. You cats is biting and forgetting your manners, while every sentence cinematic stretching the canvas. Paint a picture of war like Guernica. All we gotta do is let a bang turn it up. I spit these flows till I'm 6 below.